somewhat lengthy.
Yeah.
It takes some time to construct.
State right away, I don't know why.
Well, the Parks and Rec, for example, may sponsor a bike event, or there's been triathlete things on the Tide River that we sponsored previously, and there are fees to register, so that fee schedule will be incorporated.
I took it the
But
day when
it would only be things sponsored by Parks and Rec. For example, what I was referring to was something sponsored by another business in the community that they're doing at their property. Would we have any authority to have any fees with that?
That would be probably covered right at present through the zoning ordinance for special events permits. I mean, we can look at that as well.
or you could have a recreation tax.
Right. I mean, I don't envision, if the board proceeds and approves the ordinance after public hearing, that the staff will immediately be ready with the schedule, but we will start working on it immediately and present it to the board.
So Ms. Richardson would put together an overall fee schedule that would apply to all the things that Parks and Rec has authority over.
Yeah.
And then if there are additions to that later on, she'd bring them to us.
Right, and the board would consider them, and the ordinance, as the solid waste ordinance provides, instead of having to have another public hearing, because the ordinance says you can approve these by resolution, that it makes it easier for the board and for us just to bring changes back without having to go through the public hearing process, unless the board wants to do it that way, of course. And the schedule would probably, I'm not sure, we haven't drafted it yet, but it'd probably be fairly encompassing with not just the sales of items, fees for, we've had, I think as I reported, a rock band in New York wanted to film at the tunnel. So we have to determine how best to cover the things that may be presented to us.
So when that is done, would there also be a fiscal analysis of what that might return to the county?
Yeah, we can certainly work on that as well. Probably would be an estimate,
Right.
and then over time, yeah, those estimates would be refined.
Once you know what's happening, because that'd be useful too.
Yeah, the budget has, of course, revenue estimates for Parks and Rec, but with this fee schedule, it may, I mean, to date, I think we've reported previously, but the number continues to increase. I didn't check with Ms. Richardson before the meeting, but we're over 57,000 visitors to the tunnel, probably approaching 58,000. And probably if we had some revenue ability in place when we opened the tunnel up, who knows how much revenue that may generate.
Any other questions for Mr. Carter?
That's what this authorizes, is just to go to public hearing.
Okay, do you have a motion?
Skip's turn.
My turn, I make a motion that we, accept, R2021, 2-24 to allow them to set a fee structure for recreational activities.
For the public hearing, yeah. For a public hearing.
For public hearing.
Second.
Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Next, resolution to approve the support agreement in connection with the issuance of a revenue bond by the Nelson County Service Authority, R 2021-30.
We previously presented this subject to the board. I conferred with the Service Authority staff earlier today. They're uncertain whether or not this bond is going to close at the end of June. That's what was preliminarily planned, but they're still not sure. But in any event, what the resolution authorizes is ultimately approval or signatory approval to a more obligation resolution, which if the Service Authority is unable, after received as bond issuance from VRA for the Winter Green wastewater treatment project, in any year during that bond period that the Service Authority was unable to meet its expenditure obligations, if it fell short, then the county would be morally obligated to cover the shortfall. And although that more obligation resolution is not in, it's in your package, but not for signatory approval yet, that's what this resolution provides for. There's a procedure on what the Service Authority is supposed to do if they do have an annual shortfall. It's reported to the county, and the county's administrator is supposed to budget it and recommend funding or put it in the budget proposal for the ensuing fiscal year, et cetera. The bond documents will say it's more obligation. It doesn't require the county to take action on it, but if you read further, there's also provisions, references to state code that says VRA, if the county doesn't fund a shortfall, can report to the governor, and the governor can decide to take action to withhold funding from the county, state funding from the county, until such time as the county remedies the situation, or state funds are used to remedy the Service Authority shortfall, should that happen.
Steve, what would happen if they would come to a shortfall because of giving raises or their budget being out of whack?
It's overall, not just pertaining to this debt that they plan to incur for the Winter Green project. There any fiscal year shortfall, regardless of
I'm
what
just saying
causes it.
that if they know we're obligated, they could be fooling with their books, so the fact that they're gonna have a shortfall, then we'll have to pay it. But what's to say that, I mean, if they've given big raises and done some crazy stuff, what leg do we have to stand on there?
You appoint the Service Authority Board.
Yeah, but it takes 4 years to
You
get through that cycle.
You probably remove them from office.
Um,
I debated with myself, if I may, all morning about this subject. I've presented the board with some information. I'm not opposed to what the Service Authority is planning to do. But it does concern me, and you have some information about this at your table, and I highlighted some sections. There's a VRA analysis of this debt obligation that goes to fiscal year 2026. And this is it. If you look at that, the highlighted sections, and this is done by VRA staff, it shows that fiscal year 2026, a revenue balance after expenditures for that fiscal year just over $600,000. And it also shows at the bottom proposed rate increases that were supposed to begin in, I think, fiscal year 21, the year we're in now. The Service Authority, I think Mr. Rutherford, Mr. Reed can speak to this, is taking action to increase their sewer rates to, I think, just over $60. But those don't comport to the rates in the VRA analysis. And the water rates, which are also suggested to be increased this fiscal year, last fiscal year, have not been increased. So if you look at it sort of from a critical perspective, critical eye, what the Service Authority has done is not, doesn't comply with that scenario, which could suggest that there will be a shortfall that will be reported to the county. It's some subsequent fiscal year, and the board will have to deal with it. My other concern, if I may, is that you get to fiscal year 2026 or before, if you look at that schedule, there I think their budget for this year and next year shows significant deficits in the $500,000 range. As they move forward, that situation improves. But when you get to fiscal year 25 and 26, their balances at year end are 200,000 and 100,000 approximately. It doesn't show these annual capital projects that they undertake as being factored in. So I'm not saying it will happen. I'm just suggesting that it's very possible that they'll have a shortfall.
And I think obviously, most actions that the water authority takes is obviously in some way or fashion at the pleasure of the government itself, the local government. The struggle you have is with the current DEQ requirements on the service authority and what they have to do to make certain corrections. This is what the engineers have proposed, and
Right.
service,
They have a consent
they have a
order.
consent order on that, and obviously Skylar as well. So it's rock and a hard place, and I'm not sure how. Of course, I think engineers are always a scenario that you can challenge, but we were open to suggestions and any grant solicitations or whatever may exist. I know
Yeah, I'm not in any way trying to debate the board, but as one of the board members, when this was initially introduced, suggested, the service authority has received at least input from Aqua Virginia to look at, to enable them to come in and make a presentation on acquiring the service authority's assets. That was never done, of course. Sorry, it's a resolution to authorize signing this moral obligation agreement once the service authority moves to closure with the Virginia Resources Authority on a bond obligation over $14 million for the Wintergreen wastewater treatment project.
There's a lot more that can be said about this, obviously. The amount of money that the service authority can potentially save by this agreement is more than significant. In the absence of this resolution or this agreement, we're talking many millions of dollars of additional costs that the project would entail, and a project which is under a consent order that we don't have any option but to go forward with. And just the consensus on the service authority board is that they're just really not interested in talking to Aqua Virginia about discontinuing services in any way. So,
Yeah, I didn't mention that the interest rate is very attractive through the Virginia Resources Authority. I did feel an obligation to at least note some degree of concern about the subject with respect to the board and future boards, because I know their consideration is seemingly the service authority is going to be very limited in its ability to do much else. So, but as Mr. Reed said, and I pointed out, Mr. Rutherford, they have a consent decree requiring them to do something with that wastewater treatment system.
One motion. I move that we move resolution number R2021-32 in the support of the service authority bond issuance.
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Meyer?
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mr. Barton? Yes. Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. And now we have an addition to the agenda of the joining in a regional group concerning the cigarette tax.
All right, I apologize for the omission. We sent this information out to the board previously, and then we failed just to recall to include it on today's meeting agenda. And what the consideration is a resolution for the county to join 5 other localities to work with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission on on studying the establishment of a regional entity for establishment of a regional cigarette tax. As of, I think this July or last July, counties are authorized to impose cigarette tax up to 40 cents per pack. And what this would do, instead of the county, if the board wanted to enact a local ordinance to enact a cigarette tax, the regional entity would actually administer the tax and disperse revenues back to each locality. So it would take the administrative burden, among other things, away from the county staff and the treasurer's office, who would traditionally be responsible for administration of the tax. So this is a study to see if it's relevant, what the cost would be, what revenue estimates would be for localities. So you're not obligating yourself to the tax at this point. You're agreeing to study the establishment of a regional entity that would, after the member localities approved either local ordinance or regional ordinance for establishment of the tax, at that point, it would be in place. I can take questions.
And are we at a point yet in this discussion that we would know, like, who would be the fiduciary?
From discussions we've had, I think the Planning District Commission is considering being the fiduciary. That's
At a fee.
right. They would probably collect a percentage of
Right.
the total revenues. But, previous employment I had with a municipality, there was a cigarette tax, and the treasurer was the one who basically kept up with that tax and administered. One of the things you have to do is stamp the packages. And it's not, I don't think it's burdensome once you get it in place and establish the routine, but this would probably make it significantly easier for the administration of the tax if the board decided to implement that tax.
Well, it also makes it a level across the region, rather than having cross the county line and pay one price versus this county, you pay another price.
Yeah.
So I like that level.
Yeah, I'm not sure that details in the report, but that's something I'm sure they would look at.
Yeah.
So it's not an obligation other than agreeing to participate in this study, which would then be reported back to each jurisdiction that agrees to participate.
This is a question I didn't ask Mr. Blunt. It is my understanding that most of the counties of the PDC are receptive to joining this.
Right, yeah.
So I think with that being the case, it would be wise of us to join the other counties. And if at any time we need to dissolve or not participate.
Mr. Ralph, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was saying that knowing that most counties are going to be participating in this, I believe it would be wise of us to at least begin the discussions and join it to start. If for some reason we find ourselves that we could be self-sufficient, that's an option that we could always take, correct, Mr. Carter?
Yes, the board could act independently.
So I say we start out that way, and if we feel the need to change mode of operation, then I would do it then.
Yeah, I don't see it as being harmful.
I don't think it is. And I think it'll be healthy, as Mr. Parr had noted, that there will be some uniformity across the region. With that being said, Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve resolution R 2021-33 and participating in a regional cigarette tax administration
Second.
They study.
study. Okay. Does it say study?
Not in the resolution.
Do I need to amend something? I think my motion still stands.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Parr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Report starting with Ms. Carter's report.
Status of the COVID-19 virus in the county, per the Department of Health's Most recent report as of May 6th, the county had 2 reported cases of the virus, and the county's 7-day average of new daily reported cases of the virus was 0. They look at cases per 100,000, but that sort of exaggerates the actual cases in the county, so things are looking much better than in previous months. And then the health department site also says cumulatively to date, the county has had 890 total reported cases of the virus. Of this total, 39 persons were hospitalized or have been hospitalized, and there have been 12 deaths reported from the virus. With respect to county operations, county offices were reopened to the public on May 3rd. That includes continued measures to try to deter either the public or county staff contracting the virus through interactions. And we did permit other telework schedules were discontinued on April 8th. I did make exception for 2 employees who have childcare responsibilities until the end of the current school year, and both employees, their children are in different school districts, but both the school districts conclude their operations as of the end of May. So we just have a few weeks, and those 2 will be back at work on a full-time schedule as well.
So I have a question. So we're no longer under a resolution that would authorize telecommunications instead of face-to-face meetings. We have to redo that resolution every so often to continue.
Yeah, the board could still have virtual meetings, things like that, if that's the question.
Yeah. Yes. Is there a termination date on that, or?
We didn't see the governor's most recent newscast, but we understand that, I think it's June 15th, there may be a significant relaxation of the executive orders the governor's issued, potentially possibly fully reopening. So it's still to be determined.
But certainly,
as far as virtual meetings and things like that, continue to wear facial coverings. We're still asking county staff to wear masks and maintain social distancing, et cetera. And the board can still continue to have virtual meetings. And we're still, county staff are still engaged in almost all virtual meetings on regional entities that we're either members of or participate in.
Okay. Thank you.
American Rescue Plan, we, just as of yesterday, the guidance has come out from the Department of the Treasury and updated amounts that'll be distributed directly to local governments. The county's amount is still just below $2.9 million. And we have to submit an actual request to Treasury for the first 1/2 of that funding, which we'll probably do this week or early next week. And then only 1/2 will be allocated, and then a year later, the second half can be requested or allocated. As the board is aware from approving the budget, that total amount is included and appropriated in next fiscal year. So we'll be sending the board the guidance, and we're participating in webinars both with Treasury, with the President's Office, and with the National Association of Counties just to glean more insight into the various uses of the funds.
Would that be an itemized request by budget item, or?
No, the funds are just lumped into one revenue receipt. And I've asked Candy on the expenditure side, but they're shown on the expenditure side as well, probably in contingency.
So we don't have to send them a list of what the monies would be spent for in that?
Well, they'll probably be reporting after the fact, as we had to do with the CARES Act, and had to do with the CARES Act. But right now, the guidance that we initially seen, it just came out like midday yesterday or so, and just is indicative of the various uses of the funds. And I didn't catch maybe in there reporting requirements yet, but I'm sure we'll have to report at some point, probably periodically, with the uses of the funds. Consulting services, just to update the board, we now have architectural, engineering, and financial services, Timmons Group, Architectural Partners in Davenport, under contract, and I think we're ready to go with some of the board's initiatives that are budgeted for next year, potentially maybe bringing those, one or more of those initiatives to the board before the end of this fiscal year for consideration. The Piney River Water System, and we're still in the process with refurbishing the Usimco pump station. Usimco is the manufacturer. If the board has seen it, it's this larger structure that's on the south side of Route 56 west, going towards Piney River. The contractor started work, and the facility looks a lot better than it did, but there were 2 8-inch check valves that were ordered, and the manufacturer sent the wrong check valves. So we're waiting on those, the actual valves to come in, and then the contractor in Fredericksburg will come back and finish up the work. And then secondly, a granular activated charcoal system that was installed in the last fiscal year to as a deterrent to exceedances in some of the potable water requirements we have under the permits with the health department for the Piney River water system. We actually exceeded by 1 part per million the methane requirement, but in conferring with both service authority and staff and the engineering consultant, and then looking at the actual sampling periods for the last 4 quarters, the GAC system is highly effective. Our numbers are down to like 0.10 parts per billion. So hopefully the next quarter will be beyond any issues with regulatory compliance. The tunnel, we're still working. We're getting close, I think, to finalizing the phase 3 project for the tunnel with VDOT. We just completed the last week of April the expansion of the eastern parking lot, which we now have 56 spaces over there. The cost subject to the final invoice was just over $71,500. We're looking at expansion of the western parking lot and installation of either a standalone restroom building or a building that can include restroom facilities and other facilities where we could have sales, for example, but still those things are in process. And as I noted earlier, to date, visitors at the tunnel exceed 57,000. We're very fortunate the contractor who did the work, their initial proposal was substantially below the other two, 40 to 50 some thousand less. And if you've been out there to see it, it's working pretty well. The parking lot area looks really good, and the Parks and Rec staff are monitoring the tunnel the weekends with a part-time employee, and I think even Candy was up there this past weekend. So their parking lot on the east side was fairly full, maybe throughout the day. The western parking lot was not as full, but still cars there, almost to take up to 20 some parking spaces throughout the day. So people are still flocking here to see the tunnel.
Does this mean we have a total of 56 spots, or we added 56 spots?
A total of 56.
Well, we must not have been very many to start with now.
No, I think there were 12 or so to start with. 12 or 18, and double check the number.
Yeah.
So we actually added more, the contractor added more than anticipated. We thought it was gonna be about 25 spaces, and I think they added about 36 or more. So we had to remove some trees that weren't in the design that the engineer had. We had a volunteer engineer from the foundation who did a lot of the specifications and was gonna keep some trees, but then the contractor and our staff recommended the removal of 3 fairly large trees, which really helped us to expand the parking lot even more than anticipated. So it's been very helpful because we reported previously, it's just generated a lot of overwhelming congestion up there. This is helping, hopefully, to abate it. The drop box for the treasurer's office, it's installed as of May 4th, right in that circular drive section right in front of the courthouse entrance.
Has it been used yet?
I'm not sure, haven't checked. I haven't actually seen anybody use it, but I've seen it there, that's for sure. The reassessment is still in process. We're just waiting on Walgreens to update us, and I guess they're still somewhat tentative about that right now. And lastly, which may take some discussion, of course, is the VDOT, Department of Transportation, has, as the board knows, a Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. We have two potential projects. One is Loveland Revitalization. That's an eligible project activity. The second is the Gladstone Depot project. And Miss Joanne Absher is here, who's, I think, still the chairperson for the Friends of Gladstone Depot. We have, I handed this out just before the meeting. We're working with the Planning District Commission. They sent us over just a very preliminary cost estimate to do the applications on behalf of the county, including the contributing monies, over $4,000 from the Rural Transportation Fund. They want about 3,700 or 3,900 to complete both that one or two, well, it'd be 7,800 for two applications. I'm hopeful we can go back and negotiate that cost, of course, but here's where we are. We spoke with the PDC staff, Thomas Jefferson, last week. They've been in contact with VDOT staff about the Livingston project because, as the board recalls, we worked with the PDC staff on the Livingston Revitalization Planning Grant. Seemingly that project is in pretty good stead as far as VDOT's concerned, but we don't have the specifics yet on what the consultant to the PDC or the consultants are recommending from the outcome of the revitalization planning grant that we would, what we would propose for funding. So that's forthcoming. So.
You don't know, you don't have a suspected timeline?
Well, hopefully next week or so, they're working on it.
Yeah.
One thing that we discussed was sidewalk improvements, for example. And I'll back up a little bit. The TAP grant, the district, and I confirmed this, each transportation district will receive $2 million over the next 2-year period. So, and applicants can apply for $2 million, but if you're successful, you can only receive $1 million per fiscal year. But the concern is you can apply for 2, but they only have 2, and we're talking about the entire district. So it will be highly competitive, and I doubt if one entity is going to receive $2 million in total. So the depot project, and Ms. Absher's here, she can answer questions as well. What they propose to do is to relocate, it's to build a foundation on what was the original YMCA building in Gladstone. If the board or any of y'all recall that, it's a large cinder block structure that housed CSX, CNO, railroad crews when they would lay over there at night. So it was not just a housing, but they had a restaurant in there, meeting rooms, game rooms, etc. But CSX has torn that structure down, and the premise is to move the depot building, which is a wooden structure on the east side of that YMCA footprint, to the footprint where the YMCA building is. What has been proposed for the Gladstone application is to apply for, and they're still working on the estimate, up to $200,000 plus or minus, just to build the foundation to put the depot structure on. Both grants will require, if the board decides to authorize us to proceed, require 20% local match. So we would need to bring that back to the board. The Friends Group in Gladstone has a match for their application already, if the board wants to proceed with that. I should just take questions. I think we're in very good stead potentially with the Livingston application and very possibly with Gladstone. My concern about the Gladstone application is, Ms. Absher has just been tremendous to work with, and they've done an excellent job of working with CSX, so I'm not trying to say anything detrimental to that project, but the cost estimate they had from a regional contracting firm, construction firm a couple years ago was over $2 million. Now it's in 2019. So moving forward, $2+ million, it's a $400,000 max. It's got to come from somewhere. So I guess that's my concern, any concern I have about the project. I certainly would like to see that depot building saved, but I need to be straightforward with the board, of course. Livingston, we probably won't apply for more than, I'm just speculating, maybe $500,000 or less. And the board would again have to provide that 20% local match, because there's not an in-kind ability for either project at this point. Maybe a little bit for Gladstone, but none for Livingston. And our premise is, as I noted earlier, is to contract with the PDC staff to facilitate completion and submittal of applications. About $7,800 at present, subject to negotiation. Let me back up. So the pre-application period for the TAP grant program has begun. The pre-applications have to be submitted to VDOT by July 1st. VDOT staff, there's a central office in Richmond that administers the TAP program. They will review the applications and then shortlist all the applications per district into recommended project applications. And then, let's say, Nelson, both of our projects are recommended, then we would have to submit final applications to VDOT by October 1st.
Okay. I think it's great. One particular question I have is, now, is there any reason why you wouldn't suggest we go up to $1 million ask for Livingston, other than just the local match? I know.
Well, my concern is, so I probably didn't articulate it very well, is VDOT is only going to have $1 million per fiscal year over the 2-year TAP cycle.
I see.
So it's only going to be $2 million available within the district. And I can assure the board, there'll probably be 15, 20 plus applications for that funding throughout the district.
Just be realistic.
Just being realistic, it's unlikely that one entity, one application is going to get $1 million.
Got it.
I mean, you can do it, but the reality is,
Sure.
you may fail because you asked for too much.
Got it. Well, I think $500,000 would take Livingston a long ways, especially in the streetscape revitalization plan. So
Yeah, it's just that the PDC staff, when we met with them virtually last week, they're not ready they're waiting for input from the consultants on the scope of the application. And we should know that later this week or early next week.
is that the same consultant that we used?
Yeah, LPDA and
Got
ERP
Great. Yeah, keep me impressed. I think that's wonderful.
or APR.
I do know the planning district said they had some preliminary conversations with VDOT and just the potential of this project. And it's my understanding that VDOT was very receptive of doing something for Livingston. So
That's what input the PDC staff gave county staff last week,
Yep.
that their discussions with the VDOT staff were very, we can't assure the board it's going
Sure.
to be successful, but preliminarily, the VDOT staff seemed to indicate this would be a good application.
perfect.
So I guess the consideration for the board is authorizing the submittal of both applications, one application, and hopefully, or one application, and hopefully authorizing us to work with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission staff.
Do you need that action today?
Yes,
So the motion is going to be said to authorize county staff to work with the planning district in regards to the two potential applications for a VTAP.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions from Mr. Carter? Chris?
Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Does she have anything to say on the last one?
Sorry?
She's been up on the last one. Does she have anything she wanted to say? She was very patient.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to the presentation now that it's been?
No, I'm just working with the vice president of project admin for Coleman Adams. We've also, sorry. I'm also working with.
Why don't you give us your
Saunders.
name just so?
Joanne Absher, I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Joanne
Thank
Absher. I'm president of Friends of Gladstone Depot. And so, we've been working with Massey Saunders, and he's gotten us some conceptual drawings. I've also reached out to Coleman Adams and who we worked with before, so they know the project. And I'm working with the vice president of admin projects there, and he knows our situation. He knows our limited fundings. So he is willing to work with what we, with the set amount. Our main issue is, if CSX doesn't see some progress on the site. We've procured the property, we've got it surveyed, it's ready to go. But if they don't see some progress, my fear is they will come in and tear the building down. So, I'm hopeful that this application will go through and we can get a little something going there. With COVID, we have not been able to fundraise, so things are getting better now. We're hoping to get back into fundraising and maybe grow a little bit, and maybe we can work with Livingston and we can all work together. Right? Have it on both sides. And I appreciate your consideration in the matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Carter? I have a question about the timeline for the comprehensive plan. Do you have anything that you can share on that now that the budget's been approved?
Just preliminarily discussing it with Dylan Bishop, I strongly suggest that you were to start developing a request for proposals in anticipation of being pretty well positioned come July 1st to proceed with retaining a firm and getting that project started. But I can't speak today where her status is, but we have discussed it. And as I said, Dylan, you should work on developing an RFP. We'll help you if you need to, so that we're ready to go as soon as possible after July 1. And we could issue it even beforehand if the board wants to and work on it. We'd have to have this scope of service, and whoever is retained would give us a schedule working with Dylan's office, the commission, and probably and likely the board as well. It probably takes some time, but if the board wants us to begin that now, we can certainly do so. And if not, I do anticipate that we'll be issuing an RFP, if not just prior to July 1st, as soon as possible after July 1.
It's not gonna be TJPDC, I hope.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Our discussions have been, consulting firm.
And that discussions with the planning department and yourself?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
I would just like to see it begun as soon as possible. I mean, not to rush it, but we're gonna do it.
You're gonna be very disappointed at the end.
I know, but it has to be done. There's too many things that are impediments to what the Reverend was talking about, without some sort of comprehensive plan.
I think it's important that we don't project disappointment connected with the comprehensive plan. It can be a very beneficial thing, and with what's going on in the county as we speak, it really speaks to the importance of having a comprehensive plan that can direct the type of development that's going to go on. So, and
Well, I'd just like to see one time it's been used to beneficiary in the last 50 years.
perhaps now's the
You
time.
know,
That it's ever been pulled off the shelf and even looked at.
That very well might be the case, but that's where we have to make comprehensive plan that's relevant.
Yeah.
To the county and the problems that exist.
And the process has a lot of value in and of itself in terms of,
The only way the comprehensive plan means anything is you've got to follow it up with zoning to match the comprehensive plan. That's where you get into the technical part, side of it, and the arguments there.
which we can do.
Well, I've just never been able to take somebody and say, your property is worth X amount of dollars because we want to see this happen, and your property is worth nothing because we don't want nothing to happen but look at it. Now, that's, if you can handle that, then you can handle anything. And I'm not, it needs to be tried, but I mean, I'm just telling you, don't get your hopes up.
Any board reports, Mr. Parr?
TJPDC, as it relates to leadership, it looks like I should be chair starting in August, potentially. The board wishes, looking forward to some affordable housing initiatives, as well as talking about, economic development, not just in a local sense, but in a regional sense, and broadband as well in a regional sense, and how we can expedite across, not in Nelson, and of course the region itself. Beyond that, I don't think there's anything notable at the Water Authority that I can remember, and I think that is all.
Everyone will be glad that we got our resolution passed.
Yes, they will be, yes. That's all I can think of.
Mr. Harvey?
Just, have we advertised for the position of social service?
Concerning the planning commission, I was not able to attend the last meeting, but both of the public hearings that we have at our evening session have to do with projects that were approved, the Verizon cell tower and the proposed zoning ordinance updates. Those are, that we have the public hearings for, they were approved unanimously at planning commission. So with not a lot of, dissent, it was very little discussion on that. They also discussed the comprehensive plan as well. The chairman asked the rest of the planning commission to be in touch individually with Dylan and Emily over the next month to get some input in order to craft that RFP. So they're looking at that as well. So it's the only report that I have. Grace, do we have any other information on appointments?
Yes, I sent you all an update. We still have that vacancy on the Region 10 Community Services Board, and that Patricia Heggie had applied and said she could start in May or June, and we haven't received any other applications from anybody else. And the Social Services Board, I've advertised for that, a South District member. And the local Board of Building Code Appeals, we had a member pass away, and so we'll need to fill that spot.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? As it relates to the building, zoning appeal or building appeals, can you email the info related to that so that I can forward it on to the Builders Association? Because I think that would be a great place to find an applicant. And Steve Crandall will be much missed in our community. without a doubt.
Since it is now May, and Ms. Jacobs has applied for the Region 10 Community Services Board, maybe time to appoint her to that position so she can begin as soon as she can. That would be, I'm sorry, Patricia Hagee, I'm sorry. So, does anyone want to make a motion?
I don't know her. All right, I'll do it. Mr. Chairman, I move that we let Patricia Hagee be appointed to the Region 10 Community Services Board.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I'll say.
We have it, Mr. Parr, second. All right.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Parr?
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes. Anyone on the board have correspondence to share with the rest of the board?
Yes, I received correspondence this morning. The train situation on Faubourg, it just keeps getting worse. And I've gotten 3 phone calls from residents over there as of late. It appears that it is a specific train, with a specific engineer potentially, who is doing this right in the middle of the night. And these residents have been there for 20, 30 years. So it's not like they hadn't dealt with trains before and, had situations. And they're continuing to remind me that it is getting, it is being very miserable, even after the work that has been done. I'd really like to put some pressure on Norfolk Southern. If we need to go to our delegates, Matt Ferris and John Avoli, I'm prepared to do so, but we need to make some action there and get something corrected. And it's specifically in Faubourg where it's becoming an issue.
We checked with them last week, the representative from Norfolk Southern said they were still working on some track work, and that the input from that employee was they still thought that sounding of the horns would stop once they finished work on the tracks.
Apparently work is complete and it's still
Some
continuing.
work was complete.
Yeah.
We'll double check and follow up, of course.
Yeah. So if we could just make sure we get action on that, these folks are pretty miserable. Mr. Chairman, that is all the correspondence that I want to bring up at this time.
Mr. Harvey? Mr. Barton?
Excuse me.
Any correspondence?
It was Skip Barton's birthday yesterday.
It was Jesse Rutherford's birthday yesterday.
What a coincidence.
Happy birthday to you.
Well, thanks.
Are y'all twins?
Yeah, we were born on the same day.
Only politically.
Is that
Yes, Skip also voted for Trump.
Sounds like more of a directive.
My son-in-law was born on the same day.
well, happy birthday to both of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Get as old as I am, you don't like him anymore.
Respect each one of them.
Directives, anyone have anything for the rest of the board? I have one thing. It's my intention to draft a proclamation that recognizes July 5th, which would be the 1-year anniversary of the termination of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So if anybody wants to contribute or review or take a look at that going into our next meeting, that would be something I bring up the next meeting so we have it done in time.
So that was when Dominion announced?
Yes.
Like that.
Excellent day for that.
How ironic.
Other business?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we had to go in a closed session.
Have you got?
Can we go to the restroom first? I tell you what, I'll be fine. I will.
Well, it could be a while, so do we need to take a break, take a 5-minute break?
Yes, let's do
Why
that.
would we not?
Okay,
Let's
and then we will move for the closed session. And that'll give
reset.
folks an opportunity to.
What's your plans to vote on that statute today?
On